I wanted to say, like, that's one of the things I think is most effective about this, and why, when I read this book, I was like, this is such a natural adaptation to make, because it's a book about a cursed video, which is already, like, cool, but I think it almost makes more sense to write a book that's about a cursed book, or a cursed piece of writing, because then you can replicate it in the medium you're writing in. And here, it's, of course, I think it's perfect, because not only it's about a cursed film, but you can show it to us. And we have the effect that you fundamentally can't get, where you feel like you've watched it. And you worry, like some like base part of your mind is like worried that you have watched this thing that you shouldn't have watched.
Welcome, friends, to episode 355 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And this week we discussed Gore Verbinski's 2002 film, The Ring. 7 days.
So is this a cursed episode of a podcast? Is that
timer starts now, everyone? Now you got to solve the puzzle.
You know what's fun? I was thinking about it. If this episode is our curse, I think we actually are omitted from it because we are inherently passing it on.
Yeah. Well, we have to copy it and then pass it on, it seems. So
I mean, I think through the process of uploading, that probably counts.
Yeah, I agree. So we're safe. Listener, you're screwed.
Yeah, you have to share it with a friend. That's the rule. You got to have to share this episode with someone you know who'd be interested in the Ring coverage.
Share the Ink to Film virus around as the original author intended. Bit of a change with the material, but like the curse is somewhat the same. Some of the beats are the same. Fun adaptation, honestly. Man, it was really fun to revisit. Gore Verbinski is a filmmaker that you have seen movies from. I don't know if you realize.
Really? Okay. The name sounds familiar, but I couldn't have told you what movies he directed.
We'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to talk filmmaker. We're going to talk a lot of stuff. But to start out, we want to say that we are going to Worldcon. So if you're going to be there, look for us. We're going to be on paneling. We are going to be doing a really exciting live episode, first ever live episode of the Ink to Film podcast. It's a creative conversation, which is where we interview the person who created the source material for an eventual adaptation. And we are doing it with Martha Wells for the Murderbot Diaries. So we're super excited for that. Hopefully all of you will join us there if you can. Yeah. If not, we will eventually be releasing it in the main feed.
I think it's also going to be on the live stream, is my understanding. At least it's marked as like a live stream event on the app. So if you're attending virtually, you should be able to watch it as well. There should be ways for you to catch it, but of course, nothing beats being there in person with us and celebrating with us. So we'd love to see you.
Yeah, definitely. Back to this adaptation here, The Ring. We talked last week about the original novel called Ring and some of our history with the material, but for those who haven't checked it out, which we do recommend. Luke, what was your history with the material and how did this viewing strike you?
Well, yeah, I wanted to touch in on that because honestly, it's one of those things where like I've seen this movie, but watching it just like brings back memories, right? Because I only kind of vaguely remembered this film. I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters around when it came out. It is possible it wasn't in theaters and I saw it like an after-the-fact rental kind of situation, which maybe would have even been appropriate for this kind of movie.
I think that's how I saw it because I think a friend of mine let me borrow it, if I remember correctly.
Maybe both. I may have done both, but like it was definitely like close together, and then I didn't see it again, and I hadn't seen it for a long, long time. But it brings me back to a very particular time in my life because I was looking at it came out 2002. I would have been like 17. And like that's like the perfect age for a movie like this. I think it's also like some of the tropes of this movie have kind of become more staples of the horror genre in the years that followed this. Not to say they didn't exist before, but like this was a high profile version of some of this stuff. In particular, and I know this is a long-standing tradition in Japanese horror, but like the young girl sort of specter with the hair that's covering her face. and that being a prominent figure that you see in horror films, but just other things too, right? This was a really influential movie, and I feel like a lot that has come since has been inspired by and a reaction to commentary on this movie. This helped me like remember what it was like to see this though when it came out. It's also maybe the fact that I wasn't as versed in the horror genre at the time when I saw this. So I remember this movie being quite terrifying.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased. So I watched this last night. I started it up, I think, at about 11 o'clock. So it was one of those like late night, everybody was asleep, I'm all alone, turn the lights out, watch this movie. And I was like, this is like legitimately scary, even for me now, my current age and sort of jadedness around having seen a lot of stuff now. I'm like, this is still a frightening movie, even though some of the effects don't hold up super well, but overall they do. There's like certain things that I will definitely talk about that I didn't like about the movie, but like overall, like I had such a good time with it. It was genuinely frightening, and it was one of those movies that by the time I'm done, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to go to bed just yet. I need to kind of have a palate cleanser before I go lay down, because I'm like worried I'm just going to have these like images in my head and I'm not going to be able to sleep, and it's going to be fucking with me, because this is a movie that feels off, and it feels like something's wrong with it, and it plays with your emotions, and it makes you think it's going one way, and then it completely pulls the rug out from under you. And there's a lot that I admire about this movie. And even though you could say some of it is quaint by comparison to maybe some other like what we would maybe call elevated horror that has come out in the years since, and you could maybe compare this to, maybe it's not quite that, but it's like borderline, right? Like it has that mainstream appeal, and yet there's like elements of surrealism and playing with cinematography and staging and all different kinds of aspects of filmmaking to make it feel off and wrong. There's a lot of really smart stuff being done here. So it's kind of like a bridge movie. At least I kind of think of it that way, between your mainstream horror fare and your more like avant-garde kind of horror movie.
I want to mirror a lot of what you just said, which is like takes me back to a particular time, takes me to a time when I was much more terrified in films, and like just as time goes on, I think like you said, I've become more jaded, but I am such a fan of horror. Yeah, I'm such a fan of horror, and I know like, you know, things that are in conversation with it, and I've seen the evolution of it. But here, to go back to this time period, to see this film, to see it, like you said, shot the way it is, to see like there's an experimental film in this film, you know, that like it's cool.
And I love
to
that
see
the guy even jokingly calls it a student film that they watch, and it does kind of feel that way. You could see why he would say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I actually love that about this film. There's so much that I like about this. I can still feel the roots of like the original story and the things that I like from the original story. Some needed updates from that book that we talked about, like some really rough stuff that
there were some smart changes made here, and in fact it's closer to that original tale than I realized.
Same.
But it's because the changes were made to the characters, and yet their fundamental roles remain pretty unchanged, I realized. And there was a lot of similarities between this version of the character and what we got in the book. It was a smart version of adaptation, right? Where you're taking it and you're changing it to make it serve. And we talked about, if you haven't listened to our book episode, I think it's worth checking out, because we really get into some of the like troubling aspects of that book. That brought in different, aspects of gender and sexual assault and things like that felt very edgy and maybe a little bit mishandled. And you could have looked at this cynically and said, oh, they're avoiding that stuff to make it more palatable for a general audience, to make it be PG-13. We're not going to get to those really adult topics potentially. But I think that's a fairly surface level read of it, because I think this movie's more effective without that stuff getting in the way. And the scares are just as powerful here, if not more so.
They did a great job. So in my research, I saw that there was supposed to be an R-rated cut of this film. Like it was going to be an R-rated film, and they ended up pulling some of that back to make this a PG-13 film. And there's a lot of commentary. I would be
curious to see what an R-rated version of this film looks like.
And there's a lot baked into that too, because like I think this was the era of PG-13 horror films and them doing extremely well. Is the big resurgence. We talked about it last week with like the book, but also here with the film, especially for an American audience being exposed to Japanese horror. This created a trend. There's so many others that I'll list here in a little bit, of ones that came in the wake of The Ring that were like remakes. And I think that this film is more so a remake remake of the original Japanese film than it is an adaptation. As it is, of course, an adaptation, but it's not so much from the book. It's more so redoing the original film. So I think some of those updates we may want to track when and if we do that for a bonus episode.
Yeah, I would say when. One of the things I noted watching this is like, I don't know how much credit to give these filmmakers for these changes, because admittedly they even say, I will say it's kind of buried deep in the credits, I noticed, where they finally acknowledge this is an adaptation. I would theorize maybe they thought it would kind of take away a little bit of the mystique of this movie if you lead with that. But I think it's unfortunate because a lot of people don't know this is an adaptation because of the way they did this. But I was left really wanting to watch the Japanese version of this film now that predates this, because I want to know, is this where all this good stuff's coming from and the Americans are just sort of copying? Or I assume some stuff from that, some stuff was brought on for this version. Would this still be my favorite version? That's an open question. Or if I saw that Japanese film, maybe that would be my new favorite. So this goes high on the list, I would say, for a future bonus episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to talk about more of my experience with it, like I was so pleasantly surprised at like how much I remembered, but also was still like shocked, and like some of the effects of the time are cool, and the way that they were able to make it look good in camera for the most part. And like there's, there is some CG elements and stuff, but the filmmakers were smart about where they put the little ripples and the TVs and the things to spook you and scare you. And like all of that was really fun to me. And it just took me to a place of like, damn, I enjoyed myself. Like I love the performances for the most part, mainly from Naomi Watts. This was kind of her breakout role after Mulholland Drive. And so like for her to go from a David Lynch film into this and then to blow that open and her to have the career that she's had is really cool to see.
Just real quick on Naomi Watts. I remember watching this as a teenager, and she is, a mother here, right? So she's this older woman who obviously quite attractive, but is this whole other generation. And it's a surreal experience watching it now and feeling like she could be one of my friends, because she is of an age with me. And like when I went and looked, and she was like around 35 when she made this movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, like she legitimately is around my age now. That is a weird feeling. Very strange. It made me identify strongly with her, though. Like I was like, yeah, I totally get this person now.
What's wild too is when you watch older films where people have passed, and then you're seeing them at roughly your age, and you're like, oh, it's like they could be walking down the street in some cases. And yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, how like it's film it transcends time in that way.
Yeah, so, it's a little snapshot in time for sure.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. Hans Zimmer wrote the score for this film.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Which I will say, it was a surprise when I saw that. But this movie has a couple of moments of interesting score. I think there's a certain sound to the Cursed film itself. I don't know if it has a separate name, but I just call it like the Cursed film that they watched, like the Ring within the Ring film that they watch. There's a certain sound to that. He probably designed that sound, I imagine. But other than that, like mostly there's like the end credits, maybe a little bit at the beginning. But like I actually thought this was a very subdued score.
Absolutely.
And it was mostly silent. And I love when horror movies, and really a lot of movies, are able to emphasize silence to great effect. And I think this is a movie where the silence actually made things scarier.
Hans Zimmer is known for like his epic scores now, right? But like
yeah, very different kind of thing.
I think
for him, for sure.
It's good to know that there's like subtlety there. I'm sure he's a master. He can handle whatever he wants to do.
He's one of the best, man.
But it's cool to know.
He does like a concert series now where he travels around and like plays the different scores and stuff. And like, I really want to go to that now because I'm just such a fan of his.
I would love to see something like that. That's awesome. Overall, just cool to see Hans Zimmer working at this point in his career on a horror film like this. This was a cool time for horror too, because like this is a slightly larger budget than what we'd see these days. Like this is like around like 40 million for budget.
Mid-budget movie.
Mid-budget horror specifically.
Unfortunately, kind of dying out. I don't know. Maybe it's overblown, but I often hear about the dying out of the mid-budget movie.
It definitely is. It's indie movies or it's massive
huge
blockbusters. Yeah. Obviously, this film was highly successful, went on to make a ton of money off a $40 million budget. But a film that I saw floated as a reason why Paramount felt confident in creating this film was Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense coming out had them feeling like, movie. Oh, horror, and so they were like, all right, let's do this remake. I saw that like David Lynch was offered the role originally, like to direct, and he turned it down.
Interesting. A David Lynch
yeah.
version of this movie would have been something to see.
Yeah, but I think he was post Dune in his career, so he was like, I'm doing my own shit.
Fair. I thought it was so fun that this movie was set in Seattle. I did not remember that at all.
Yeah,
Seattle
I wanted to
and the
ask
surrounding
you about
area
that.
because we are about to go to Seattle. Like that's literally where Worldcon is. So it was so appropriate too. It felt like, you know, I don't think it's going to be as rainy and dreary and green. At least that sickly green that this whole movie. This movie looks like it's set in the same universe as The Matrix.
Yeah, it depends on how I shoot
color
it. You know,
coding.
it depends on when we're there how I end up shooting it and grading it. You know, then I can make it green. But yeah, I thought that was really cool as well because I was like, oh man, is the curse gonna hit us in Seattle? And I had all these thoughts. And of course, I went looking, and it does. It was shot a lot in Seattle. It was also shot in parts of Oregon. Did you see any familiar places?
I mean, there was the whole time I kept seeing stuff that looked familiar. There was a bridge at one point that looked like a bridge I've crossed before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obviously the Pacific Northwest, so there are things that look similar in Seattle and other parts of like Washington and Oregon, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
There's the lighthouse is in Newport, Oregon. The lighthouse.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've been to Newport. I didn't recognize the lighthouse, I'll fully admit, but that's cool that it's from
Could
Newport.
make a pilgrimage out there and see it sometime. I don't know.
It's a little bit away from Seattle, but yeah.
Right.
It's Newport is cool. I like Newport.
I also saw some filming locations were in Oregon's Columbia River Gorge, which I know is your backyard.
Yeah, that's where that bridge I was talking about. I'm pretty sure I've crossed that bridge. I forget which one it is, but it looked very familiar.
I mean, that must feel so cool for it to be like so close to where you're at. And interesting to take Japan, which the original story is set in Japan, and move it to Seattle, both somewhat rainy, it's isolated to an extent. So it's cool that like I think there's some similarities there for location change. You talked about the grade, so let's talk about that some. Very of the time. I mean, as soon as I turned the movie on, I was like, oh shit, we're in the early to mid 2000s. I think it was definitely a reaction to The Matrix. Everything looked like this back then. But I also saw that they tried to do most of the color in camera, so that it was baked in with filtration and.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know how you do that.
Mostly filters.
It's like a filter you put on the lens.
Yeah, so there's like matte boxes. You've seen those big things with the kind of call them eyebrows sometime.
Yeah.
But those matte boxes you can slot in rectangular filters that are quite expensive. But they slot right in there, and you can use that for ND polarization. You can do it for adding in color like that to get a certain aesthetic. There's IR filters. There's all kinds of stuff you can add in.
I think you could be cynical about it, but I would say it helped contribute to the feeling like there was an oppressive presence in this movie. Like every scene, it felt like the curse was like looming. I don't know. Yeah, I rather liked that feeling that it imparted.
Yeah, totally worked for me. Just color theory wise, you think about like what green. It's like a very greenish blue, and you think about.
But it was also like desaturated, right? So it almost felt like there was no warmth, like anywhere. In fact, there is a warmth at the very end in a particular moment, which we'll talk about. But for the most part, there was very little warmth, and so it made certain things like really stand out. But then it also just felt like everything was so cold and unforgiving.
Yeah, well, and you know the water. Motif that's kind of throughout cloudy coastal kind of area, like it was evoking a lot of that.
It's definitely a lot of overcast, rainy scenes.
And the rain is a character in itself because the water again, it's like throughout, like kind of what that can represent. I thought it was great. I didn't think it was. I wasn't cynical at all, just because like I think this helped define that color palette for that era in some ways, or made really good use of it.
And you think about it, The Matrix is iconic because it had a similar effect, right? You see that falling text. And when you later realize, spoiler for The Matrix, that that most of the movie is occurring in The Matrix, right? That green makes sense, like thematically. It makes it feel ever present, like you're in another reality. And here it's the curse. It's the whole situation is just looming over this whole movie. And it makes the media you're watching feel very sick and twisted. And I wanted to say, like, that's one of the things I think is most effective about this, and why when I read this book, I was like, this is such a natural adaptation to make. Because it's a book about a cursed video, which is already like cool, but I think it almost makes more sense to write a book that's about a cursed book or a cursed piece of writing, because then you can replicate it in the medium you're writing in. And here, it's of course, I think it's perfect because not only it's about a cursed film, but you can show it to us. And we have the effect that you fundamentally can't get where you feel like you've watched it. And you worry, like some like base part of your mind is like worried that you have watched this thing that you shouldn't have watched. and you're like, oh no, it's got me too, you know? And like you feel like it makes you feel so in the scene and in the moment, and like you are sharing in this anxiety with our characters. It's so effective. And just as a side note, I love cursed media as like a concept in horror.
Very cool.
And this makes me really want to like approach it in my own writing. I've always like wanted to do it. I've yet to like find the right avenue for it, but I just love the idea of cursed media. I think it's a really fun horror concept.
It's very cool. And then for those of us that love like the analog world, like it was so fun to watch them like use the tape decks and switch, make copies and all the things they were doing. Like all that analog stuff is fascinating to me because like Spielberg says something about how like digital filmmaking is a scientific miracle and film is a chemical miracle. They're different in that way. And so like I feel like digital media and physical media, they have differences in those ways too. Like they're magic for different reasons, and both are important and both are
This would be such a cool movie to watch. Like I have a friend who recently told me they're getting like a VCR. And I was like, yeah, like I'm excited.
I love the way that you said that though. You're like, I have a friend who it's a big purchase. They were telling me they're going to get a VCR. It's this new technology. You got to check it out.
No, but that's like my point though. Is it's like there's certain movies that I'm like, nah, give me the modern ultra HD version. But like some movies would work really well on that analog VCR, like CRT kind of style TV if you can find one. And this is one of those movies that I watched it in full ultra HD or something that I rented it on, and it was good, but there's almost something that might be even more effective in that lower quality because some of the moments that are like, oh, I can tell this is computer generated and stuff like that, or it's got like a sheen of CGI to it. A lot of that would probably look a lot better in that SD format, right? So I thought it was cool. I did wonder how accurate some of it was because like I'm not super familiar with it, but like at one point they're like twisting the film and like bending it and like that's where they find the like lighthouse on like this like, parallel piece of film, and I'm like, is this a real thing you could do? I don't. It felt strange too because the way they were like cranking on this knob to get it to do it. I don't know. It seemed like maybe they were making up some stuff for that. I wasn't sure if that was real stuff.
This is what I'll say. I'm no expert in VCRs. It's a bit before my time as far as being like in this industry, but like the crop factors are a thing. So it's possible that the film strip could have a larger frame than the crop factor of whatever VCR, how it's projected through basically.
On the film still, you just don't see it?
It's I don't know for sure, but I'm saying I think it's probably possible
just
because of
kind of leans into, like I've always heard this talked about, and I never know how much like credence to give it, but like people will claim that they saw versions of movies where they could like see a mic boom in the frame, and like, or they saw something at the edge of the frame that like was clearly not supposed to be in it. And I'm like, that could be true. And like certain versions of the film and the way it was projected and like something that you shouldn't have seen accidentally got projected. And some of that may be true. Some of it may be false memories. I don't know, but it could be
some
true.
of it is just flukes and accidents as well, like people not being where they're supposed to be. But
and then they usually, when they find it, they like rapidly fix it, especially nowadays where they can just like update stuff kind of on the fly. Yeah. Where like even if that did existed, they're gonna wipe it out and you'll never see it again like pretty soon after it happens.
So talking about like how cool it is that this medium, it's like the the tape, the VHS tape that's being like passed around and everything. The viral marketing that was done for this film, of course, is of the time as well. So people would come out from the theater, get out to their car, and apparently they would place like some of the viral marketing that was going on. They would place VHS tapes on people's like windshields, basically. So like as they come out, this tape is awesome. There, and like they're being inflicted by it.
You don't even need to do that. It's baked into the movie. Like I it's fun to do that, but like I thought it was so clever how it fundamentally like kind of at the very end it points it back towards us as if we are now the cursed ones who are going to have to figure out a way to are we going to die in 7 days?
Yeah, literally the end of the film is kind of like a look at that. Like they were almost breaking a wall to say, hey, you were the one that were done.
Which is smart, man. Like and especially back then, like this is the era where Blair Witch blew up because you could still kind of convince people that maybe it was real.
That's one that I have a fair amount of information about because I know someone who worked on that like back in the 90s. And
that is a wild movie to talk about. We could do a whole episode on that, even though it's not an adaptation, just because it is a
and honestly, I might try to get him to come on and talk about it one day because like he was there in the trenches when they were making it in the woods. Like there's not
that
a
would
lot,
just be interesting to hear about for sure.
Small crew, fascinating to talk to him. about that stuff.
This is also just such an interesting time in the transition between VHS and DVD, because I think I still had a VHS player. I'm pretty sure, or a VCR. I'm pretty sure I still had a VCR in 2002. By the time I was in college, I think I had one I didn't use anymore, and then eventually I phased it out somewhere in the coming years. So I was right at that edge where it was already an old format that was starting to be left behind, and yet it's prevalent enough to where the idea of a tape that you could find and could be passed around and people would watch was still like a part of society enough to where it would seem like an actual threat. So it kind of like occurred at the perfect time for this movie too. Whereas like if you try to do it later, it's like technology has changed so much you'd have to like update things in a way that wouldn't really work. But yeah, I thought it was a cool moment in the sort of transition. Those of you who might be too young to like know about this period, that it was a very unique period.
And I talked about that last week of how like you just don't get this kind of. If this came out today, it just plays out very differently because of the release schedule, the way that it doesn't stick in people's minds as long, and just because you're inundated with content. And like this was one of those things that like, you know, we're at school and we'd be talking
Everybody
to people
was
about
talking
it
about
and
this
stuff,
movie.
and like for like a year, like I felt like people were talking about it constantly, and then it was parodied by like Scary Movie and like, there's
famously, which I do think I think that affects the legacy of this movie and maybe undercuts a little bit of its like legacy frights because we all had a good laugh at its expense. But like this movie is an example of a film that like, yes, it's PG-13, but this movie doesn't care about the trauma it is going to inflict on like 13-year-old kids who are going to see this movie. Because I don't know how many 13-year-olds are actually equipped to deal with this. And it's like you can have like the content itself. There's nothing individually about it that feels like it needs to be rated R. But as a whole, this is a tough movie for kids to watch, and like, I think that's okay in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up on movies like this, like that I shouldn't have been watching, but it's a thing, and I feel like there is a generation of people around my age who probably look back at this movie and go like, oh yeah, that scarred the shit out of me when I watched it. It terrified me. It was like something I couldn't get over for a long time. Had nightmares. Like,
I remember this being one of those movies that like I tried to forget. Like I saw it, I was young, I was probably like 12 when I saw it, and I was like,
you're like, that's too scary. It's like I remember feeling like this was too scary for me.
I was like, I don't even want to think about the well anymore. Like I'm done with that. Let's move on and watch something else now. But you mentioned, I want to make sure we talk about this. Last week you mentioned there's a particular scene that stuck with you. Do you want to talk about it now or wait till we're in spoilers?
Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna go through the specific moments and we'll talk about specific scenes. But yeah, I'm really curious. Gore Verbinski is a name that I feel like I've heard, but I could not tell you of another film.
So Gore Verbinski is an American film director, screenwriter, and producer. He is best known for directing Mouse Hunt, The Ring, the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films, and Rango.
Oh, okay. Rango was pretty fun too. The first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films. God, That's so funny. If someone had asked me who the director of those movies were, I don't think I would have ever pulled that.
People think it's Jerry Bruckheimer.
That's what I would have guessed. Jerry Bruckheimer. If I was going to find a name, that would have been the name. Was he like a producer? Well,
that's the name that's like on top of the poster and stuff. It's like produced by, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. It's
because was he like the bigger name? So
he was an executive producer. I think he was just like he was attached to it for a really long time.
It's like when something's executive produced by Spielberg or Jordan Peele or somebody like that. They're a big enough name that you put that big on them.
He also might have had a lot of creative control over it, for all I know. Like it's an interesting, like kind of vague thing sometimes, but he was heavily involved. So his name was more notable.
Right. Yeah. Executive producers are always like that. You don't know how much they're actually doing. Sometimes a lot, sometimes not a lot.
So for Rango, he won both the Academy Award and BAFTA for Best Animated Film.
Rango being pretty good. I haven't seen that movie since it came out, so I couldn't tell you for sure.
But I want to say that there was a film that came out the same year that I feel like Rango snubbed for that, but it is what it is. People voted on it.
That was like the lizard. He's like a lizard.
Yeah, Johnny Depp lizard thing.
Johnny Depp Western kind of movie, right? Yeah.
Correct, yeah. So Gore Verbinski, his first films were a series of 8mm films called The Driver Files when he was a young teen. After graduating from UCLA, he got his first job as a script reader at a commercial production company. After director Julian Temple viewed some of his work, he signed to a production company. Eventually would direct music videos and commercials for Bad Religion, NoFX, Monster Magnet. Those are the music videos. And then he would work with brands like Nike, Coca-Cola, Canon, Skittles, United Airlines. One of his most famous commercials was a Budweiser commercial featuring frogs who croak the brand name. So
holy shit.
Yeah. He did a lot of commercial stuff, apparently.
Wow, that's one of the most famous commercials, like, I feel like, of all time.
For Super Bowl commercial, too,
yeah,
right?
That was huge.
I don't know if it was a Super Bowl commercial. I'm just assuming, because Budweiser...
I think it was. No, I
yeah.
totally think it was.
So he directed a short film called The Ritual, and then he made his feature film debut with Mouse Hunt in 1997, which became a global hit. Following the success, he planned and developed a bunch of projects. The Sky is Falling, The Lighthouse, Mission to Mars, Where the Wild Things Are, notably for our podcast, which we've covered. Catch Me If You Can.
Wait, so he directed Where the Wild Things Are? I thought that was...
he developed them, and then I think it moved from him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that wasn't him. That was like Spike Jonze or something like that.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Verbinski returned in 2001 with the action comedy The Mexican, starring Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt.
I think I saw that, yeah.
Film received mixed reviews, but then he would follow it up with a horror remake, The Ring, which struck gold globally, grossing well over $200 million worldwide. He then went on to direct the somewhat successful Pirates of the Caribbean, starting with Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black...
Are you saying that sarcastically?
I am, yeah. Okay. Curse of the Black Pearl, which earned over $600 million at the international box office. So massive success. I fucking love that first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, I don't care what anybody says. That first one is amazing. Like it's
great. And honestly, I feel like the trilogy is probably better than... It's like almost made better by the movies that followed after that were bad. To where, like, I look back at those first three now and I'm like, yeah, they were all pretty solid. They all kind of form like a nice little trilogy, whereas like what came after just felt like bloat that you really didn't need. And you know, some of the iconic characters from those, but beside the point, we're talking about The Ring, but interesting, yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean, yeah. I had some fun times with the other ones, but maybe we'll talk about that because it got adapted from a theme park ride. So
yeah, that's true. I never even thought about like that. Technically, is an adaptation. It's an adaptation of a theme park ride. We'd have to like go ride the theme park ride. And they still
film
Pirates
an
of the Caribbean, or they close it? They still have it, right?
You could still go, yeah.
Yeah,
I've been recently.
Go ride it. Although it's probably way different now because it's probably got a ton of references to the movies versus
it's Johnny
it was
Depped
before.
out now. Yeah, Johnny Depp's waiting for you at the end and stuff. So. But it's still worth doing. Yeah. All right, so this is interesting. I think you'll like this because we've talked about this quite a few times. Verbinski was also set to direct a film for Universal based on the video game BioShock.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, that's so cool. Little connections. But unfortunately, that's not happening? Or like, what's the...
Budgetary and creative disputes stemming from Verbinski's wish to incorporate a functioning underwater rail transport system driven by his noted fascination with trains derailed development.
Like he wanted to build one?
Apparently he wanted to build like the real thing.
Wow. That was probably going to be insanely expensive.
I'm sure that was what that was.
That would have been cool though. Man, I love BioShock. BioShock's like one of my favorite game franchises that I feel like is slept on by people. If you played those games, like, you know it, but like the broader video game audience who didn't maybe play them sleep on like how good those games were.
Yeah, there's not currently like a ton of TikToks on that Gen Z's making about BioShock, whereas there are some for older games. But BioShock, I mean, for our era,
and it hasn't had the legs of like a Fallout franchise or something that's continued on. There was Infinite, but like
1, 2, and Infinite, but they hit so hard for us. For anybody who likes story games in our generation, I think I fucking love those games too. And so he's been attached to tons of stuff as a producer over the years. Secret Life of Walter Mitty is something that we might cover at some point.
Oh yeah,
he was a producer on that, executive producer, and he had been attached since 2010 to direct that film. So he helped develop it for quite a long time. So, involved with so much all across the board. We could sit here forever talking about all the stuff that he's been connected to, but I think those are the relevant things for you to kind of get a sense of where he is. And this is a big deal in his filmography. Like this is like kind of his trajectory. This helped him go to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Sure. So it's an early success. My question is around the short film itself, the cursed film within the film. Did you read about the creation of that particular bit of media, and like was that him, or did he have somebody else do it?
From what I've read, it was him collaborating very closely with the cinematographer Bohan Bazelli, who again I think made some bold choices here in this horror film, like the color palette, the use. I read him talking about his technique for lighting was to try to avoid creating shadows from characters and just in general. Like natural shadows you would expect to see, because it gave the audience sort of like what you're talking about, like a off-putting feel, like things that it felt like the physics of it were breaking. Yeah, like the lack of like a natural shadow. Like if I was standing in the sun.
Yeah, that's like the opposite, I feel like, of a lot of movies that you even see today. Like I feel like shadow is such a thing that like directors like to play with.
Oh, I mean, light and shadow. The interplay between light and shadow is everything.
But you're right. Now that you mention that, there is like a weird lack of shadow in this movie. Like a lot of stuff, you can kind of see everything in the frame.
Yeah, I don't know that it's like necessarily like shadowed, like the backgrounds will still be in the shadows and things like that. I think it's more so, like I said, like direct, like a light hitting somebody and then creating a shadow in the background, like something like that, like a moving shadow. There's
not much of that.
Yeah. So I think that's another reason for it to be like strange and off-putting.
That's cool. That's a fun thing that I would have never, I could watch this movie 10 times and probably would have never like been able to put words to it, but that's cool to hear that.
Very subtle stuff. And I love that. Yeah. That's that intentionality that I think like filmmakers and artists, like that's what you imbue, and that's the unsung hero, right? Is like the thing that makes people feel like this movie's weird and they can't put their finger on why.
It reminds me, there's like this weird light phenomenon. I was here. Like I had heard about this before, but someone reminded me of it recently, and I wish I knew the name of it. But it's like there's a particular time of day, and it only occurs in certain parts of the Earth, where the sun points so directly down that there is no shadow on everything, and it makes it look like it's fake, and like
it makes it look like a model or like it was like CG
poorly
or
rendered into the scene. Like it looks
awesome.
So weird.
It's very cool. Yeah. Another thing to talk about while we're talking about the DP2 is like the production design. Apparently it was inspired by Andrew Wyeth's muted palette. So blues, grays, browns, all of that in addition to the filtration and all of that like working in concert, I think is important to note too, like for how this film ended up looking and the creative team involved in it. There was all these inserts that I talked about, flashes of Samara, ladder shots, like little wisps.
There's a lot of like stuff that feels like it's subliminal, like they're fucking with you. Yeah, for sure.
I love that stuff.
One of the things I loved is that the eye of a horse was used often in like a close up of it, when it's like this like really thick black, and it kind of gives that ring vibe, but it's also an eye, so it looks really strange, and you don't know what animal it is when you first see it, and it's kind of off-putting, and like I don't know, stuff like that's so fun that they found this image and thought they could use, and they use it so effectively, and then it ties in with everything that happens with the horses, of course.
The ring motif is just so well used in this film, and like I think to have the well, I mean, I again, maybe this comes from the Japanese film, but to have the well be the ring, and that was such a, I mean, that revelation when the first time I saw this was like, holy shit. Totally. Should I not say that yet? Should we wait?
No, it's fine. Okay. I think it's fine. This is a pretty
it totally like rocked my world, especially at that point. I was like, this is so crazy that it all came back down to this and that reveal. I mentioned that this paved the way for a lot of like American remakes of like Japanese and Asian films in general. Of horror films specifically, The Grudge, Dark Water, which was also written by Koji Suzuki.
Yep.
Pulse, which was another like TV kind of media one, and One Missed Call are all ones that people point to as like these directly followed in the wake.
The success of this paved the way.
And they're specifically remakes of Japanese films into American films. All right, so we're going to move into the plot now. Teenage girls Katie and Becca discuss an urban legend about a cursed videotape that causes whoever views it to die in 1 week. That night, Katie, who viewed it 1 week ago with her friends, is killed by an unseen force. At Katie's funeral, her mother asks her sister Rachel, a Seattle-based journalist, to investigate her daughter's death. Rachel discovers that Katie's friends all died in bizarre accidents at the same time as Katie's death. Rachel visits Shelter Mountain Inn, where Katie and her friends saw the tape. She finds and views the tape. It contains strange and frightening imagery. She then receives a phone call from an unknown caller who whispers, 7 days. Though initially skeptical, Rachel quickly begins to experience supernatural occurrences linked to the tape. Rachel recruits the help of her video analyst ex-husband, Noah. He views the tape and Rachel makes him a copy. She identifies a woman on the tape, horse breeder Anna Morgan, who killed herself after some of her horses drowned themselves off Moesco Island. Rachel and Noah's 8-year-old son Aiden watches the tape. Aiden also possesses supernatural abilities, which he uses to help with Rachel's investigation.
Yeah, interesting that they call him supernatural abilities. I was unclear what was going on with Aiden. It's mysterious.
Yeah, because it's like the supernatural things could be happening to him, and he could just be kind of like regurgitating
getting
them,
targeted in some way.
Yeah,
being shown things. But it does seem to like predate the stuff that was going on with the cousin, and it's like, what is going on here? I don't know. He's definitely plays that creepy kid really well.
Yeah, and the kids in this movie are so good. David Dorfman, is the child.
Aiden, yeah.
Aiden, yeah. the way he very quickly scribbles like rings and all
well,
that stuff.
Just every time he looks like something's wrong with him.
He doesn't blink.
He doesn't blink. Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about how she doesn't sleep. He doesn't blink.
You're right. And Davy Chase, the girl who plays Samara, she was in like Donnie Darko. She's the voice of Chihiro from Spirited Away. So the main character in Spirited Away. She's also the voice of Lilo from Disney's Lilo and Stitch.
Wow.
So like pretty wild to connect all of that.
That is wild. And she's good in this. She's scary.
I did want to know too, one thing that we talked about last week that I found some more information about is the ghost stories and Japanese folklore in general.
Yeah.
So the type of ghost that Samara and her Japanese incarnation Sadako is based on is the mythological Onryo, a Japanese ghost that manifests after dying in the grip of powerful rage and returns as a very pale and physical ghost to seek vengeance on the living. Mm-hmm. So drawing on the folklore.
And often depicted as like
Japan.
a young woman with hair hanging over the face, yeah.
Which is just so cool. And it's like, while this feels new and fresh to an American audience in 2002, it's also like baked into culture of Japan from who knows, possibly, hundreds of years.
Very cool, man. So I want to return to that opening scene because it was interesting because to me it almost felt like a different movie, and yet it you get into it. It's your first like big scare with the cousin. I forget what her name is, but she views the movie and you see her face like start to shift a little bit, and then it sets up the scare later where we get. Which this moment was seared into my brain. The moment of opening the closet and you see the body and like the face falls over, but the mouth is just like stuck in this scream that is like reminiscent of like that painting, that famous Scream painting.
The Scream, yeah.
The Scream, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Scream. Amazing. Like just it's so well done. You only see it long enough for it to sear in your mind, but not too long to where you can like look at it long enough to like realize what's going on.
They did such good work with the editing in a lot of this and the way that they built tension.
Yeah, there's a little sound that plays when it shows too that gives you a little bit of a jump scare.
Yeah, the tension that they play with like wides and the way like they let things build often and things lingering in the background. But this moment of like seeing the face is so shocking for a PG-13 film. You're like, whoa, is this going too far?
Whoa,
and the effects work like that looks awesome. That looks so good and terrifying. Mm-hmm. They did a great job with this the beginning here for sure.
Well, and so you get these two teenage girls, and like this is a very familiar setup, right? They're talking about something spooky, like this is a setup for like almost like a slasher movie, like any number of
a little
like
scandalous as well, right? Like they're talking about like sex and stuff, like possible hooking up, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like teenage girls who are talking about who they're dating and like what they're doing and like all this stuff, right? And they're being like too adult, right? So we've often seen this as like a trope in horror. But yeah, just like it subverts it in certain ways, plays with it in other ways. I like that the other friend ends up just kind of like being so traumatized by what happened that she, goes to an institution later and makes an appearance. But like that's the only other time we see her. Yeah, I thought this was a cool bit. But this comboed with some of the stuff early on with Rachel, the Naomi Watts character. Again, this just felt like familiar horror movie setup stuff. And early on, I was like less enamored with this movie, and it took a little bit. But really, I think it's when she goes to the cabin and views the movie where this thing shifts into a whole new gear. Because we watched that movie, it's fucking weird. Like yes, if you kind of like pick it apart and look at each individual image, like nothing in there is like that crazy or that like particularly terrifying. But there's a bunch of unsettling stuff going on. And just the impact of watching that for the first time when you've never seen it before, it's powerful. And I love the surreal, like, not only is it a surreal film she watches, which comes out of the book, by the way. It's described as being partially surreal, partially moments where you're seeing like real people. That is right out of the book, but what exactly you're seeing is shifted some here. I love that the movie itself gets surreal because we see this tree for the first time, and it is this red color that's really strange. It's alone on top of this hill, and then she's in this cabin, and as she's watching the movie, the red that is like coming through the leaves of this tree that's like way up on top of a hill is somehow making this like incredibly saturated red.
Yeah.
Like infuse the entire room, and it's like it kind of stretches belief, but it gets into that surrealist territory of like something is wrong and magical and strange that's happening right now, which adds all this just energy to her watching this movie. And I think it delivers. One thing I would say, and this is partially because I was watching it on the format I was watching it on, I could tell some of the ladder stuff was just like a CGI ladder and like on a computer. And I'm like, what is going on with this ladder? This is strange. But like, you don't notice that again. Like, you probably don't notice that on the format you're watching it on back then, especially if you're watching it on a VHS.
I also feel like it could be a subliminal or like a psychological thing of like, this is wrong. It doesn't look right. Yeah. It's strange. It's off-putting. So like maybe they were leaning into the CG of the time to be like, it's not fully believable, but it's not our world. It's weird.
I don't know what the effect they used for the mirror was, but it was so good. And they use it again later when she views the mirror in person. But the person who's looking in the mirror, instead of a mirror, it looks like a cutout or something, and you're like actually viewing the person instead of something reflected. And then when you see Samara and she like gets pulled back and stuff and like fades into shadow, and again, there's not a lot of shadows in this movie, but this is a moment where you see a shadow and like the blank kind of wall that is on. It's just weird, right? There's just so many things about it where you're like, is this a real thing I'm seeing? And so when she encounters it in real life later, it just makes you like have full body like shivers because you're like, wait, this is a real room that actually looks like this? I don't know. It's just so strange. I love all of that. And I think this is where the movie shifts into a new gear and you realize you're really dealing with something unusual here and different.
I love the way that the film affects the real world, right? Like that being the transition point, like the passing through the threshold of like, now the world has gone crazy.
Looking glass, right?
Yeah, totally. All of that worked really well for me. Like you said, it did feel like kind of a familiar setup. It felt like of the time in a lot of ways, but I still like the sort of investigation that's going on through and that's like from the original source material.
Yeah,
like,
from the book, which by the way, so we should say Rachel, Naomi Watts' character, she is the Asakawa from the book. Also a journalist. Also, it's like a family member, like a cousin or somebody who dies, has a kid who ends up watching the movie, and it's a big moment in the story. Like, that's all right out of the book. Gender swapped. And then the biggest change is to Noah, who is the Ryuji character in the book, and that's the one that had all kinds of weirdness about, was like a professed rapist, and it's very, very strange in the book.
Things that made like me pause and almost not want to continue reading.
What is going on with this? Yeah. This version of Noah has this like past relationship with Rachel, which is also like hidden from us until like when it's revealed that it was, she says like our son watched it, and I think that's the first time we find out that he's Aiden's father, and like so there's some cool reveals around that. I thought he was okay, though. Like, his performance is one of the things that I look back on, like, I wish it was a little better, because there were times where it kind of took me out. It's hard to put my finger on it, but there's something kind of bland about it. There's something kind of cold. I didn't quite believe him as a real person. There's just, like, certain things, like, there's moments where, like, you see that he's basically just a shitty dad, and, like, he has this past trauma they hint at. But I don't know, man. There was something about him that just came off a little unreal to me. Did you get any of that from the performance?
Well, for one, I'll say incredible improvement from the source material. So for me,
sure.
that's a big plus, just right off the gate. But like, it felt like where I felt like Naomi Watts' character and just her performance and the movie as a whole, like really was navigating this, this horror movie in a really interesting way, and like kind of felt unique and like wholly its own thing. He felt like he was like slotted in from some other horror movie. Like he felt like he could slot into like almost any horror movie where he's a part of it. One thing I will say too that this just made me think of is I love the way that the faces are distorted in pictures and in the
that was a cool effect.
Stuff. Very cool.
That's one of the things that sells him that something real is going on, is when he like looks in the security camera footage and like his face is all weird. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was
but
cool.
In general, he feels like he's kind of like a dirtbag, and he like
but like that sounds interesting. But like he purports to be, and you hear about him kind of being that, but like he doesn't seem that way. I don't know. He just doesn't seem like anything. He's just kind of a blandness to the character that I kind of wish.
Yeah, performance or character? More. You think?
I don't know. It might be partially because we talked about all this stuff that was stripped out of the character, and maybe they didn't find enough to replace it with.
Yeah.
I don't know. So part of it could be writing, part of it could be performance. I don't know. I'm not, enough of an expert to say, but the result was a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I did like the element of the videotape sort of knowledge and all that stuff as well, though.
Oh,
like,
for
just,
sure.
like,
And that's how the character works in the book too, right? Like he's the skeptic who comes in, he's willing to watch it, and then like there was like a weird moment where he's like, "Oh, you let me watch the video," and she's like, "I told you not to watch." I was like, "Yeah, come on, dude." Yeah, so I don't know. I wish there was something more there that we could really sink our teeth into with this character.
I mean, if I had to point to something though, I do think he's kind of like the least interesting part of the film. The Aiden is good. Like a lot of the other supporting characters are good, and I think like the film, there's a lot of like really strong stuff happening through like Naomi Watts' performance here, and like even that scene that you're talking about where he went and like watched the tape. She like goes out to the balcony and the way that she's looking through the windows of everybody watching TV and stuff.
What a
like,
weird
all
moment.
That was so cool because I'm like thinking, you know, like it's kind of in commentary with like everyone's watching this stuff, everybody's performing the same things, the like cyclical nature of maybe some of that, and then into like any one of these people at any time could see something cursed that changes their world forever, or sees a piece of something that changes the world forever.
Well, there's definitely a thematic element going on here that's kind of undergirding the entire film about like our fears around mass media and what it's doing to our brains, right?
Yeah.
And like the friend is talking about this early on, right? Like we don't know what these waves are doing to us, and then like when she's standing out on the balcony and she sees all these TVs, it's like access points for some sort of evil that is like it's everywhere. It could get to all of us. Especially in retrospect, I look back at that scene that way.
I love when things that are like kind of ubiquitous or like universal are used like this too, where it's like everybody's got a TV in front of them.
Now you're
like,
afraid it's going to turn on and show fucking static, right? That
totally.
ever happens, you're freaked out. Static is a thing that doesn't happen anymore. It's kind of a shame. But like I remember when TVs used to legitimately cut to static because like they would stop airing stuff at a certain hour of night. So at night, like it would usually play like a flag and something would happen and it would cut to static. And like it was a weird time.
Well, and it's so jarring sometimes too. Like if you're changing input, like if you're like, I don't know, you unplug like a NES.
Yeah, it was also just like the baseline for like older TVs. Now it's like a blue screen. I feel like there's certain things that they realized was like not as like upsetting to looking at the actual.
Well, static is so upsetting to look at. It's so kinetic. It's so
the
like
sound is terrible.
It's
and
so
grating.
loud right away. It's always like it's too much. And so like that leaning into that was really smart here.
Yeah.
All right, so next bit here. Rachel heads for Moesco Island to speak to Anna's widower, Richard. En route, a horse aboard the ferry kills itself by jumping overboard. Rachel discovers that Anna, after 4 consecutive miscarriages, had adopted a girl named Samara who possessed the ability to psychically etch images onto objects and into people's minds, tormenting her parents and their horses. Meanwhile, Noah travels to Gale Psychiatric Hospital and finds a psychiatric file on Samara, which contains a missing video last seen by Richard. Returning to the Morgan home, Rachel finds a fake birth certificate proving that Samara is not the biological child of Richard and Anna. She also discovers the missing video, where Samara apologizes for her actions, but explains they won't stop. Richard insists that Samara is evil and electrocutes himself. Noah and Rachel find a loft in the barn which the Morgans used to isolate Samara from themselves and the outside world. There is an image of a tree behind the wallpaper. Rachel recognizes it as the tree at the Shelter Mountain Inn. They return to Shelter Mountain Inn, led to a well beneath the floorboards. Rachel falls inside and experiences a vision of Anna dumping Samara into the well, where she survived for 1 week. Samara's body surfaces from the water. After Rachel is rescued, they arrange a proper burial for Samara. Back home, Aiden warns Rachel that it was a mistake to help Samara. Rachel realizes that Noah's week is up. Samara's ghost crawls out of his TV screen and kills him. Rachel realizes that Samara's apology was actually a confession and that she was only spared since she made a copy of the cursed video and passed it to Noah, fulfilling Samara's goal of killing endlessly. She helps Aiden make a copy of the tape and refuses to answer his question on what would happen to the person that watches it.
So much to react to here as we wrap up this movie, but like, let's go all the way back to the moment on the ferry with the horse. It's bizarre that she walks up to a strange horse and starts trying to pet it. Don't do that. Especially if it is clearly reacting negatively to you. You keep reaching your hand in there. I was like, just in general, this is a bad way to deal with a strange animal.
Well, some people are really into horses, so I can understand like engaging, but you gotta know your limits.
You gotta back off. But that sequence is one of those points in the movie where I'm like, this movie is fucked up. Like, this horse is, like an innocent animal that we see leap over the ferry in a horrific sequence and then just get twisted up against the side of the boat in a really affecting moment and then get torn up by the turbines, I guess, or the propeller. Like, what a terrifying, just like bizarre moment of the film that comes out of nowhere. And it's just another moment where you're like, this is a different animal I'm dealing with here. This is not something that, a teenager mind is
yeah.
perhaps prepared to deal with.
And I love that. I did hear that in the editing process, it took them longer than expected because originally they were going for that R rating and then figuring out how to navigate the PG-13 rating. I'm sure that like they were just edging up to the censors.
Yeah.
Like, is this good? Is this good? Is this good?
Had to
so
be.
This probably like, had to make the cut because
Horrific
of
sequence.
like some specific things that were not shown but implied and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this is a sequence, surprisingly, that I did not remember happened in the film.
Yeah, no, I had forgotten. Yeah. One moment that I thought was a really smart piece of storytelling is the first time she sees the fly, which is itself a weird moment because it's like a fly that looks like it's on a screen, but it's within the screen itself. So you're like, it's this like, there's a layer here, like it's a video of a screen or something. And you're like, what's going on here? And she tries to touch it, and it looks like it's moving weirdly, but like she can't. And then later on, she like literally plucks it out of the screen. And this is the only moment we get that like truly sets up what happens at the end of the film, the final big scare, right? And it's so smartly done. It's a creepy ass moment. Her nose is bleeding when we cut to her, which just feels like, what is even going on here? Just really unsettling stuff. I love that part too. Brian Cox shows up in this movie. No memory of him being in it. I love him. He's so good in like a lot of stuff he's in. I feel like he's really great. I don't know if he's a character actor, but he plays a lot of interesting characters. So
I would say that he historically has been, and then with Succession is like, I mean, like he's so good in Succession, like so hateable and like interesting as a character. But yeah, the reason we probably didn't remember that he was in the movie is because he's in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and like,
but he's
like
effective,
5 minutes of
man.
screen time. Yeah,
he's good while he's in it.
He's got gravitas.
Yeah, and him killing himself is like just a really disturbing sequence, and you don't know what to make of it. And I just love the misdirect that this movie does on us. And it fucks with our expectations around when we're watching a movie that's this scary. So often horror films will give you like a lifeline. And it gives you a sense of like order can be restored, goodness can prevail. Once you understand what's going on, it's not as scary as you think. Like, it's a misunderstanding, and it, like, plays with us because, like, part of us doesn't believe it, even as it's happening, because we've been shown enough stuff that's so weird and unsettling that I'm like, I can't quite buy it, but, like, you want to, because you want to escape this feeling. And so, you want to believe that Brian Cox's character here, Richard Morgan, is the villain, and that they wrongly killed this child, and all of this was caused by the parents, and really this isn't an evil situation. This is about an angry spirit who was wronged in life, right? And who we just got to set it right. And they do so much smart stuff to try and set that up. There's a ticking clock to this movie, obviously with the 7 days thing and how we get closer and closer to the final moments that I think is such a effective way of ratcheting up the tension. And then when she falls into the well, this was a moment where it was like almost too much. I remember it took me back to being basically a kid watching this and feeling like I can't handle this. This is too much. She fell in there and she's like in the water, and you just know that Samara is like in there too. And it's going to be this like dead body, like unknown decomposition. And
I feel like she's also scared that she's going to like grab her and pull her down. And like, that's what it feels like. Yeah.
Everything, man. You don't know what the fuck's going to happen. This is a movie that has done so many surprising things at this point. And then she gets this body out and it's like completely fine. And you're like, something's really wrong here. And then a really cool sequence of CGI where this whole body just rots into a skeleton. I thought was really effective. And, yeah, such a that's a super memorable part of this movie. Her at the well, holding the body, but it does such a smart thing where it relies on like things we've seen before in horror movies. Because after the fact, the body's getting taken away. They talk about the proper burial, and a lot of this goes back to the book. I will fully grant. And we even have Noah say, "It's all over now," in that very reassuring tone. And it's reassuring us as the audience. And then the movie starts to like lean into this. And all of a sudden, we get a scene where she's in bed with her son, and there's warm light for the first time we've seen this entire movie. There's sunlight on them, right? And it's like everything's happy until he delivers the "why would you do it? She never sleeps. Like you've done fucked up" part here, which is so effective. It's such a twist, and it's like a twist in a way that I feel like we've become cynical about twists in movies, but this is such a smart way to do it because it just plays on expectations. It's not pulling the rug out from under us. Everything was there to sort of show us that Samara is legitimately an evil force. And so I just love this reveal. And then, you get the sequence where she comes out of the TV itself. And that was one of the moments that was absolutely horrifying. This is the reason I think I saw it in the theater, because I remember the theater's reaction. Yeah. You know those times where you're in a theater, especially for horror movies, and there's just a energy to the crowd. And I remember the energy of the crowd reacting when she comes out of that TV, and how everybody just starts screaming and like freaking out. And like, everybody thought we were safe at that point, right? Like you thought you had made it out of the movie and everything was going to be okay and you could go home feeling good about it. And then it just pulls the rug out from under you in that sense, and just like, oh no, you're not safe. Here she comes. Such a iconic sequence. I think it looks pretty good, by today's standards, but at the time it was just so effective having her come out and like still have the color of the film, like of the movie itself that they were watching, like as the ghost, and then how she like pops around and follows him, and just she doesn't even have to do a lot, but it's just like her presence is so terrifying. And
so much is left off screen. Like we don't actually see him killed. We see like
we don't know what
after
they're
effects
doing.
When she rotates like what's Rachel, right? She gets there and she rotates the chair, and we don't even see his face.
We see her reaction.
We see her reaction. The way that he set up all of this as like it's all over now, happy ending was it's so brilliant. And that's like, the film could have ended where it seemed like it was going to, and it would have been like, oh, it's a serviceable horror film. Like I had a good time with it. And like,
it had its fright, but we got out of it safe. We survived.
And then building in all this other stuff, you're like, no, not the guy who helped, and like, and then the moment where she comes through the TV, incredibly referenced and like parodied, but like so iconic, and so it like made a horror icon, like we've talked about. Like Samara, in every iteration is like in the list of like horror entities that people think of when they think of.
And her coming out of the well too, because let's not forget, the first thing that starts is her hands coming up, and she comes out of the well. Her hair leads her. So I thought it was clear that they had filmed this and played it in reverse or something, right? Because it's the only way you get that effect. But like it's like, you're like, why is her hair coming out before her body? Like that makes no sense. And it just gives her this otherworldly power. And you just can't get away. And like I don't know. I feel like we're him, right? We're on our back foot just trying to get away desperately from this.
I think that's this final like twist is what cemented this film and kind of where it was. And I love it. The thing that we got to talk about too here is making it to the end. There is the moment where they're copying the tape. Everything's going to be okay. And instead of showing us, they leave it like ambiguous. And for us, we're like, I think that's what we were talking about earlier, is like, we are the ones who have now been given this copy. So now we're totally screwed.
It cuts to static. Yeah. It's just,
and then notably they do like in quick rapid succession show the entire like experimental kind of like ring film.
They flash
very quickly,
real quick,
like just like blazes by.
Just in case you weren't sure that you'd seen it.
And I did hear that there was an alternate ending showing Aiden dropping the cursed tape in a video store with a note advising to copy it. So it's like a deleted scene, extra thing. Glad we don't have it, but noting that is a thing that exists.
Let us be the audience who has to worry about this curse now. I think it's a really great way to end this movie. I do have to point out one other thing. The moment where he's going through the images that are implied to be like Samara like was able to burn these images, and they look like they're like negatives almost, and he holds them up to the light to be able to see them. There's one of a horse that looks like it is straight out of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You remember that art? How much we raved about that art? Yeah. That might be the single scariest image that we're shown. And I love that because it's so weird, and you're like, every time I saw it, I couldn't tell what was going on because it looks like it's a rocking horse, but it definitely looks like it's a real horse, and there's something else going on in the background, and because it's this like black with like a negative space being used to imply the image, so effective. There were other spooky ones shown in that set of images, but that one will stick with me as one I particularly loved. And like, it's like that's there for the people who want to dig into it and like really think about like how she was able to make this movie, and it's through this telekinetic power. I think it's a change to have her not actually be their children, have some sort of adoption seems to have happened. I assume this is explored in later movies, but That's not really how it is in the book, because the whole thing is that the mother had her own telekinetic powers, which I guess we don't really get here. She's just like someone who bred horses, and wasn't actually powerful in that way. So yeah, I mean, it's really cool how a lot of these images come back. The idea of the horses, she can't sleep in the barn, the horses keep her awake. That leads to the ladder, which itself is scary. Like, I would never fucking climb a ladder that tall that's just like like supported. It's just like leaning. No fucking way. Especially no one else is coming up behind me to like add to the weight of it. I'm like, I don't know if this thing can hold us. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Really spooky.
It is. I do like how a lot of the details kind of like cyclically come back around and create like the ring per se for the whole narrative as well. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this, and I think that it deserves its place. I have like newly found respect for the film. I think I had forgotten.
I agree. I think new respect, because I liked this movie in retrospect. I was like, I think this movie really scared me when I was a kid, but I just hadn't seen it in so long, and like part of me was worried it wasn't going to hold up. And I think there are parts of it that feel a little bit kind of broad and just kind of, Naomi Watts' performance is good, but it's not like iconic. Like, there's certain things about it where you're like, okay. But like the overall sense that this was just like a cursed film, and if you really let it can really truly frighten you. And it's like, I don't know, there's something really cool about a horror movie like that. There's something special going on with this movie, I think.
That's something I wanted to say much earlier about my experiences. Like, I had a similar one to you. Like, I watched it late at night, alone, fiance's out of town, all that kind of stuff. And like finished it, went into my bedroom, shut the lights off, and I'm like, it's pretty dark in here right now. Like, let me I don't know, let me play some music or something as I go to sleep.
Like, TikTok for a while, bro.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those scenarios where I'm like, I'm not afraid. I like to watch the scariest of scary movies. Yeah. But it got under my skin a little bit when you're by yourself and it's raining outside and all that stuff. Hey. Yeah.
All right, man. So we got to make our final judgment here. A book versus film. I think it's pretty obvious that I'm definitely taking the movie here. And I do want to give the caveat of I really want to watch the Japanese film now to see like where I should be really heaping this praise most. But if just looking at this American film adaptation and versus the book, I think it's clear that this works better as a movie. I think it was really smart to change what they did with the characters. So yeah, definitely an easy one for me. This is a movie with better situation.
Yeah, I think this is an easy one for me. I'm going to take the movie in this case. There were definitely things that I like and respect from the original source material, but there was a lot in it that I was like, I felt like extra things that once they were stripped out, as you said, like it felt like it focused it a little better here. And I am very excited to cover Ringu, or the original Ring film, because I also want to be able to see the sequence of like where they kind of adapted things and who's deserves credit. I have seen that film, but I don't remember it like at all. So it'll be fun to revisit that and get this whole complete the entire Ring and get all of it, narratively situated.
Maybe at some point we'll watch Ring 2 or Rings 2.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I know our step down, but just to continue on with it.
Yeah, there's other source material too, other books, but we'll see where all that takes us. But we are going to sign off here.
If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know in the form of a rating and review. Let us know your thoughts on Ring, whether or not you've read the book, your memories of seeing this film. We'd love to hear from you. If you're on YouTube, let us know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video. If you are on another app, whatever app you chose to listen on, leave us a rating and review. That helps get the episode out and gets our podcast more ears on it.
And be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all of those at Ink to Film.
And if you'd like to support this podcast another way, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Ink to Film, and that's where you can support us for as little as $1 a month, and you can help keep our show going.
Yeah, all right. We are going to be at Worldcon here very soon. We're not sure exactly when that episode will be coming out, but keep an eye out. And if you're going to be at Worldcon, come find us, send us messages on social media.
Yeah, Friday the 15th is when it is.
And that's when our live show is with Martha Wells. We're really looking forward to that.
All right, that's going to be it for The Ring. Nothing left to do than to say until next time.
Keep adapting.